Hello, people. This week, I went back to one of, oh my God. Okay, I went back to one of my favoriteest properties, Mass Effect. This week, it says it's a trilogy, but I don't think it really technically is, even though it kind of technically is. I'll get into it. Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm moving my arms weirder because I'm afraid I'm going to whack my microphone. It's like right here. I hope the sound's coming in good. I'm going to try not to whack the microphone. Mass Effect Andromeda, Annihilation by Catherine M. Valente. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed this property almost as much as I want to say Star Trek. Almost, right? Like it's almost unfair because Star Trek has obviously so many seasons attached to it, but then Mass Effect has the games attached to it, so I'm like, I don't know. It's a closer fight than I guess you'd say. It's just such... What is it we say? It's such hearty, fulfilling science fiction. That's why I like it. So, rating-wise, I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5 for your general reader, right? Us. Casuals? Maybe not for casuals. Fans of the game. I think it's more like a 4 out of 5. It gives you little bits to chew on that are very fun. Now, the question about the trilogy, right? This is the third of these that I've gotten. Now, when I go to Audible, again, I go to Audible and it says part of a trilogy. When you read the books, it's not really. Other than loosely. Loosely being, these are all, okay, there's the Nexus ship. It's a ship going to the Andromeda galaxy, right? And so, as people gather or traverse or move along on that mission, right? So it's all part of the same timeline, right? Of the time before the Andromeda mission begins. But it's not necessarily the same people, if that makes sense. So it's loosely a trilogy. Now, none of the people in this are in any of the other books. So the other two had, I think, Cora as your main, like, person you follow. This one doesn't follow her at all. Just the general mission statement is propelling people. So in that sense, you don't need any of the other books. Do you need pre-knowledge? Do you have to have played the game? Not necessarily. Our author, our Catherine M. Valente, does a very good job. And I say very good because Mass Effect has a fairly diverse grouping of aliens. And then, of course, cultural interactions between those aliens. And then our author doesn't get bogged down by that. Does a great job describing, giving you that sense. So I think even without any knowledge of the game, you can have fun reading this book. Obviously, with knowledge and as a fan, it's even more fun. So keep that in mind. We wake up, our guy wakes up, expecting to be about to dock with the Nexus ship, his ship to dock with it. That done, his job will be done, and he gets to move on with his new Andromeda life, which is what they all want to do. But it's science fiction, so clearly we're going to have an issue, right? And early on, we wake up a few characters this way. Therion, Drell. We wake up Yorick. What was Yorick? An Elcor, etc. We don't bog down too much with each individual wake up, but I think it's important, right? I feel like, okay, hold on, where was I? the wake up process, right? You're coming out of cryostasis. There's a lot of disorientation, right? We go into sort of the weeds of it. We don't just show it. We go into the weeds of it. And if you read any amount of sci-fi, it doesn't take you long. This is, what is it? One of the most non-annoying tropes that I've found in science fiction. The old go to frozen sleep and wake up, and 1,000 years have gone by and you're on the other side. It's a great way to keep your characters alive for long distances and then get into some action. It detaches them from other outlets, right? So if you know you can go to New York and get the army, that affects your story. But there is no New York. There is no major city. There's going to be frontier, right? They're all by themselves, all this action. But we spend the time to actually be with them as they wake up. I feel like this goes a long way. Because I was trying to think, by the end, I really like a lot of these characters. And I'm trying to think why. It's that wake-up process, right? To be groggy in the morning, to be a little disorientated, to, sort of the past thoughts are meshing or interacting with the next day's thoughts and what you have to do. All these things sort of swirl in these moments when you just wake up. And so you can relate, even if they're aliens, even if they're different than us. And our author doesn't miss that, right? So I do end up caring about these people. So our first guy, what's his name? What's the first guy's name? Cinna. He's a Quarian. Our next character is Annex Therion, Adrel, Yorick, the Elcor. Kilasia is the ship. Now again, we use these names a lot, and the author does a point. They're odd-sounding names. I feel like it lends to the oddness of the aliens, right? So if everything was named Bill and Ted and if you called the ship Michigan, those words are already sort of heavily in use. So they tend to remind you of those things already. So when you're sci-fi, I feel like you got to give me sort of original names that aren't too outlandish. Xandar's a little weird, right? Your Z sounds you don't ever want. Kilasia rolls off the tongue. That they name their ships, that part of their names are their ship. Again, you're starting to build culture. All these things. Because, like I said, they're fairly complex. Aliens. Your Quarians live completely in suits and lost their home planet. They're on a flotilla. Your Drell are like green, bug-like, I would say. Your Elcor are huge. They're like very large. All this comes across in the book. Again, not even all at once. We don't do a data dump for you to get all of this. The author pieces it out to you. So if you know already, you can just grab the strands. If you don't know, you're happy with what you're given. I mean, it feeds both groups of people very well. Our Elcor. Our Yorick. Oh my God. This is maybe the funnest character for me in the book. I love Elcors in general. Just the idea of them. They're Elcor and the Hanar. Because what they are is they're very large, right? And you would think they're beasts. But they live a long time. They talk very slow. What do they do? In their world, because they have such good smell, this is what makes them a good medic. It's useful in the story as well. Their sense of smell is so strong, kind of like your ants, right? Where they can smell and understand and communicate with smell, right? So what do you do when you're now grouped with a bunch of people who talk and can't smell? Then you've had thousands of years to develop without inflection. The inflection would come in smells. So what they ended up doing is they will label every sentence before they say it. Right? What does he say? What he goes, and it's very monotone. It was monotone in the game. It's monotone in the book. He says, "With great With great resentment, go away." Right? Every time, every time he talks is like this. Some sort of descriptor ahead. And at first it's odd, but it's fun how fast you just roll with it. You're used to this character describing his frame of mind before he says anything. You just very quickly get used to it. So add to this, right? Add to this his backstory on top of being a medic. Is, again, his name isn't he wasn't born Yorick. He changed his name to Yorick because he's a Shakespearean actor. He's currently rewriting Macbeth, an Elcor Macbeth. He wants to add more violence, more fighting to it. He talks about how he like a what do we say? An angry, maybe jaded actor. He learned all his lines. He was doing a perfect job, but he got turned. He wasn't cast for the role in Hamlet because of some younger actor, and so he's gonna make his way, and he'll be the main actor in the new universe, Andromeda. And he drops these Shakespearean lines the whole time, but the whole time it's with these these descriptors in front. I'm just imagining trying to read Macbeth, in this monotone Elcor style, with hot anger, I stabbeth thee. It's so much fun. Just the odd confluence of things that come together in this one character. It's just too much fun. He's our doctor throughout this. Drell, this Drell wakes up. She has perfect memory, and the way they describe it, again, this is fun too. Just great. Let me go way in the weeds sci-fi stuff, because you're already dealing with aliens. Why not make it interesting? Her backstory: she used to work for the Shadow Broker. She won't mind killing you. She'll find you. She's an investigator. She makes moves. Underworld, seedy kind of person. She says that Drell have perfect memory. Everything. They remember everything. And then the way they describe it is, it's not just that you remember. It's that as you remember, you relive it. Exact down to each sensation, like you were there. Which has got to be a little bit convenient, right? If you had a really fun day, if you watched a really fun movie, it makes for a weird, an interesting, introspective kind of a race of people. And then of those, this individual comes to us. And in the blink of an eye, right, you should be back in the present time, in reality, and deal with that as it comes. Very fun, very cool. We're given a quick taste of even the broader universe. These aren't the only alien races. There's one of every race. A large number of each race of people coming on this mission. They're going to set up a whole new universe, and these decided to come. You have your Volus, short guys in suits. You don't hardly know what they look like. And again, you would think, in general sci-fi terms, you wouldn't want two characters the same. So your Quarians are in suits. So are your Volus in suits. Isn't that too close to the same? On the surface it would be. But in action, they're very different. Your Volus are short. Their suits make them look like short, fat guys. even though that's not what they look like inside. I'm not exactly sure what they look like inside. They live in like full deep ammonia atmospheres or something like that. They have to carry that atmosphere with them, whereas the Quarians are just very afraid or unable to deal with pathogens. So theirs is to keep pathogens out. You have your Batarians, who are looked down on like as a criminal element. We talk about chemical forests with Yelkor and the ocean planet of the Hanar. All these kind of things. It's very... The game is so rich already. And by game, I mean the story of the game is very rich. It's not... It deserves more books than it's gotten. There's more books to be had. I'm probably going to get those at some point. I haven't bought this one. I might end up buying them all. It's really enjoyable. But again, that's just a taste in some spots. It didn't linger on it too much. Enough to make you interested. If you're not, it's enough to broaden out the book that you're in, so it feels like a wider galaxy, right? That they aren't just prop aliens. We come to our problem pretty quickly. And the computer just straight says it. The computer's like, yeah, 10% of the Drell are dead. But the fail-safes in the computer, they're dead in cryo. Always has to suck. You go to sleep, never wake up. They're dead in cryo. The computers didn't pick it up. The fail-safes didn't save them. And the pods themselves say working perfectly. Right? So that's not good. And on top of thousands more... Oh, God. On top of having thousands of more people in other pods, if it's a failure of the system, those people are at risk. If it's some pathogen, that needs to be contained. And if it's some kind of attack, that needs to be figured out, right? So they're woken up to try and deal with this problem. Woken up some 50 years out, right? 50 years away from where they need to be. So X amount of hundreds of years have now gone by, asleep. At first they think it's Kepral's syndrome. Again, just great names all around. It sounds enough like something, but not too much to remind you of something else. Kepral's disease is only found in Drell. I love this too. Your Drell were first found by your Hanar, which you wouldn't think. Again, Hanar are big jellyfish-looking things. And on first glance, you wouldn't think, like, this is a race that would, venture out in the galaxy. But it is. They are, and they found the Drell. And they brought them from their desert planet to their ocean planet. Seems fine, right? What's the problem? Problem is, after a lot of generations, what no one knew was they have weak lungs. They're evolved on a dry planet. Now they're on any kind of air is slowly just sort of, drowning them or molding the lungs or however you want to say it. So they can develop Kepral syndrome, which will kill them. But it doesn't kill everyone else. So if it's Kepral syndrome, then everyone can go back to sleep. Not a problem. They wake up a Yasi. I think that's how you say it. He's a Hanar. The Hanar are almost, again, they're like the Elcor in that they're slow speaking. But what do they do? They don't say I or me. Because they don't feel anyone's worthy enough for individuality. Because we were all created by the Prothean. That's their idea. And they have various prophecies in relation to this. So they'll say, this one does not feel good. they talk in this kind of tone, right? They also have this religious fervor about the end of the world and all this. And a lot of the Drell think or are sympathetic to these views because they were essentially brought into the galactic fold by the Hanar, right? The very interesting pair. All right, we wake up with Captain Ketsy. She's a Quarian as well. Her and our Cinna had a thing for a while. They like each other. They were in a group called, I forget what the name of the group was called, but the point of their group was that their people have spent a lot of time living in the flotilla, just a collection of ships because they lost their homeworld. Renek. Yes. They lost their homeworld, and so they've been trying to get it back. Well, this is a group of young ones who say, let's forget about getting it back and establish a new one. That obsessing with getting it back has held us down as a race. We can't be on the council. We're not seen the way we should because we don't have a planet. This sort of thing, right? So that they were in this sort of a radical group, but when they were young. And now they're on the ship because the ship is providing that fresh start that they think that they wanted the whole time. Politics comes into play, right? I explain that to explain that politics throughout, because obviously it wasn't a malfunction. Obviously it's not Kepler syndrome. It turns out to be much, much worse. Almost like a super pathogen. It's raring to go. They don't know the extent of how far it can go. And accusations start to go around. So in that, politics between these races starts to matter. It matters that maybe Taurians are ahead of Quarians. It matters that Batarians don't like your Volus, etc., etc. All the prejudices that they wanted to leave behind are being brought right along with them on this ship and are front and center in a lot of the arguments they end up having about how to deal with the problem, what should be done, how to fix it, etc. Very fun. And it doesn't weigh you down. It's not slow at all. Some of it's just backstory, right? Like with the Quarians. Borbala. This is a Batarian, particular race. She's a straight crime boss. She's only on this mission because it was that or sort of get killed by her own grandkids who ousted her from the mob boss crime family that she started. And so on the one hand, she's mad at that, but on the other hand, she's proud of them because if they weren't good at what they were doing, they wouldn't have been able to oust her. I'm like, are you okay? It's complicated. She has brought thousands of contraband fish. Now, at first, I'm like, what are we talking about? Fish? But the more you think about it, the smarter it is. A bunch are in egg form, frozen, ready to be redone, right? Others are sort of just normal fish. But if you're leaving your entire homeworld behind, what did they say? It won't be long before just a little taste of home, literally a taste of home, will be worth who knows how much. Whatever the monetary system they want to use, she's going to want a cut of it, right? For some of these fish. I'm like, it's actually a smart idea. I could see why you wouldn't want to bring it, right? Like you don't want to contaminate new systems, etc., etc. But crime people never usually care about that anyway. And people would still eat the meat. It was going to happen eventually. We come to, I think, the most, we had the funnest character, our Yorick. But the most interesting part of this book is Cinna's grandmother. Because it explains so much. one, it explains stuff. That's why I like it. But even without the explanation, right? So you don't know any of the games. The setup is so wonderful, right? You get so many, like Terminator, the robots took over, the Matrix. But there's always the lead up, right? We never get that story essentially. What was the world like before the Terminator showed up and Skynet was killing everyone? What exactly was the world like before? What was the other one I said? Before the robots took over in the Matrix. You know, how nice was the world? What was happening? This sort of gives me that because they're Quarians. Those are the ones in suits. They made the Geth. The Geth being these sort of autonomous, robotic type, to them, machines. Well, his grandmother is a VI, a virtual intelligence. And it says she's highly illegal, but in a weird way. Back. So I think this is like a great-grandmother, like some 7, 6, I don't know how many, 5 generations back. It's been a while. But it's part of his family. But it's been a long while. Back. His people were just on the planet. Everything was fine. They were universally renowned sort of for their engineering. And as a people, they celebrated that, right? The Greeks celebrated athleticism. They celebrate sort of this technical prowess. And what they would do is have a virtual copy of a dead relative. Just before the relative died, they downloaded what they needed to download and saved as much of that person as they could. And obviously, throughout the generations, you're trying to get closer and closer to the real person, right? It's not that they make a point to say in a few spots that it wasn't. They never got there. And again, you get the sense that I'm like, you thought you didn't get there, but what if you got closer than you realized, right? You get this sense. But just the idea of being able to download people, you know, if we could now, we would. Absolutely, we would be doing it. And then we would do just like just like the author describes. We would be trying to get that to be as real as the person was. Once you, what is it? If you get 80% there, 90% is not that far. I got the look, the mannerisms. People who knew him say that's how he would have acted. But we'd all know deep down, like, can it do the spontaneous? How does it react to new? Can it show me something that wasn't programmed, right? All that mysterious part that makes a person, right? Why is Data sentient? If we're thinking Star Trek, right? Always this question of sentientness in your robots. So they had these ancestor VIs. Every family had them at first, and they had a large data bank. But then the Geth, their own creation, started asking questions like, do I have a soul? Am I real? Well, what about me? And they were like, you're just, what is it? You're a toaster's a toaster. I don't care if it talks. Until, of course, the Geth starts shooting them. Massive war ensues. Their planet gets destroyed. It's a problem throughout the sort of galaxy. These Geth, these autonomous robotic things. And it was their fault, right? This race, the other races know they had to go to war against the Geth because of this race, right? So you're sort of shunned because of that. But also you're like, well, does that make them more sentient if they were willing to fight for their rights? Maybe not. Maybe you say I programmed them to fight for their rights. I don't know. I love the questioning of it. But then again, you come back to our story, and this VI was downloaded just before this grandmother suited up and went to war against these Geth, which would have been way back in their history. So the way I said, it's a weird horror to them. On the one hand, for them, That was sort of the pinnacle of their technical prowess. It's where it would always end up. If you're good at engineering, you're going to get into robotics. You're going to want those robots to act on their own. Somebody's going to want them to think on their own. That's just the next logical step. So that at some point they were that good at it, right? And that's an example of it, just sitting there alive, so to speak. So in the one sense, it horrifies them because the virtual intelligence, that thinking, is what led to the war and led to the implosion of their, all of what their civilization, essentially. And now they're having to rebuild a new civilization. But on the other hand, it's this wondrous thing, right? It's this shining medal of an achievement that happened, a universal achievement. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, everything has its drawbacks, right? You make one thing that's good and it's used in three bad ways, and then the good and the bad sort of wash out, and you end up in a new spot with that new thing, right? So the car, a lot of people have died because of the car. A lot of goods come from the car, enjoyment, this kind of thing. Planes, all our technology sort of does this. And so in that sense, I'm like, what if sort of your guests and the war, as much as it costs, but if you think of it scientifically, it cost a lot of lives, yes. But it's sort of short term in sort of galactic terms, right? In galactic terms, you're going to have way more time than the small amount of time it took fighting the gap. And what if that's sort of the growing pains of reaching a state of true virtual intelligence that you could then download before everyone dies into a virtual intelligence and not be losing anyone, right? So what is it? The war is the cost of immortality, so to speak. I can see that argument. And I think some of the Quarians see the same argument. And of course others are like, it was a horror show and more horror shows are to follow, so let's just get off that path altogether. And he has that confliction with him. But personally, for the Cine guy, it's a connection, right? It's a connection to his past, to his grandmother, it's his relation. In her time, she was a genius level what do we say? They say she was one of the best neural designers of her time. Like the sort of the funny saying was that she stopped having kids because she could build better ones. That's how good she was at sort of encoding these guests to work. And you can imagine if you're just playing, what is it? They stop being tools and the artist starts to play, right? The artist level of tool making, right? Just that extra ethereal creativity artists can bring in. This kind of thing brought to these VI. This is the wonder they started a war. This is the coolest part to me. And the fact that, again, she comes off as just an old lady, but you imagining back in her day, she strapped up. She strapped up and went to war like the rest of them. Got gunned down. The Geth came and destroyed the ancestor VIs. There was a big data core of them or whatever, and they destroyed that. So it's like, your creation did a number on you. Very complicated story. I love it. At some point, right, we wheel all the way through. One thing leads to another. There's both a virus and a worm, right? A code in the code of an actual virus in the bodies and a worm in the code of the ship that's not letting the ship get rid of the virus, right? It's twofold, and he needs help to fix this, and his grandmother is that help. His plan is to sort of sacrifice this grandmother VI by letting her into the ship. He's saying her code would be overwhelmed by its code and she'd be lost. I'm like, lost. What do we say in movies? If you don't see a body, bro, that thing ain't gone. You're gonna make Ultron, but that's for a different book, I assume. That's just in my head. It doesn't say it anywhere in the book. In any case, before he does this, he has to show the captain his former love, and she does not react well to it. Sort of sad for the guy, right? That it went south on him. She wants this thing destroyed instantly. She is horrified by it. What does he say? Is like, you brought Armageddon with us to, you brought Armageddon to a new galaxy. That's how she sees it. It's that big a deal for them. A bit sad. We then sort of get to the end, the ramifications of it all. What do we say? Alas, poor Yorick. Our boy gets the disease, right? It kills him. Rip Yorick. I really liked him. I really did. But before he dies, he does end up making a cure. He needs to put the cure, he only has one go at it. So they don't know what to do. It turns out the whole thing was our captain's idea. She got a little crazy. Everyone has this idea of what the new could be for the Andromeda galaxy. And this captain, this Quarian, did not like the idea of the council races sort of reestablishing themselves in this new Andromeda galaxy, right? So that would be humans, Turians, Solarians, and Urasari. So she conspired to kill them with a super virus. It was supposed to incubate in some of the Drell. Some of the Drell then would die in the pods. In interacting with the bodies, somehow, that would get transferred out. She wanted that then to transfer out and into the Nexus, where everyone was going to group up. Hyperspread rapidly, kill everyone, and then just be left with the non-council races to start fresh in this world. That was her plan. A very homicidal plan, if I'm being honest. He doesn't, of course he takes it the way you should. I mean, you're just going to kill everyone? That's jacked up. What's wrong with you? But obviously it's a person he is attached to, so it's double gut-wrenching for him. What we end up doing is we give her the injection and then make her walk amongst all the people. They just have to sort of touch her. They'll get whatever the oils from her into them, and it'll cure the thing, right? Sort of an easy cleanup, aisle 6. It doesn't harp on the ease of it. What it harps on is sort of what it's like for the Quarians to be out of their suit. That this is a massive fear for them. But it's her punishment for killing who she killed already, because a bunch of people did die in the process before. It didn't all go to plan. It wasn't supposed to happen so quick. More died than should have, etc. Right? So it's sort of a punishment and a way to help everyone. So Yorick dies. I believe the captain dies. Sort of sad moments at the end. We lose the grandma. We think. I personally don't think she's going to eat it. I think she's going to turn into maybe an actual VI, maybe an actual artificial virtual intelligence here. But I don't know. It sort of ends this way. It's a great look at these races, these aliens. It's solid science fiction. I'm gonna check out more. I want to play this game actually. I never played Andromeda the game. I want to check out the game. That's sort of how the book ends. FYI. I do want to check out the game just for the story. I also want to check out any other side stories. So I'm going to be looking into that. But obviously that's not going to be next week. That's going to be later on down the line. I think that's about it. Go check it out if you want some science fiction action. Ad time? And these are my ads. These are my books. Go snag one if you're interested in helping the channel. I have a sci-fi book. A sci-fi book or two myself. Are they as good as Mass Effect? I'm going to say yeah. Why not? Why not? I give myself credit for originality. Go check them out. Go check them out if you're inclined. Tell me what you think. Okay, people. I recorded this late. A hot second before I finish editing. I'll talk to you people next week.